Israel's claims to the land are illegitimate because they are founded in a self-defeating premise, demonstrating a fundamental misunderstanding of the text on which that divine promise is established, therefore nullifying any subsequent claims to ownership. And that premise is that Abram demonstrated unwavering and unquestioning allegiance and devotion to God. He says he believes God, but his actions say the opposite. In Genesis 15, when establishing this covenant for the land, God tells Abram he's going to give him the land. Abram says, I believe you. Then God says again, I'm going to give you the land. And Abram then says, how will I know I'll get the land? That is a direct question after saying, I believe you. He said, I believe you, but then demonstrated the opposite. Then God requests to demonstrate somehow to establish this. God requests specific sacrifices. Abram brings the animals, cuts them in half, then falls into a deep sleep. We don't know what happened with the animals. In Ibrahim and Allah, Ibrahim tells Allah he believes him, but then still asks for reassurance for his heart. And the reassurance that Allah provides is resurrecting 4 birds. Ibrahim sacrifices 4 birds. Allah brings them back to life, and they come back to Ibrahim. Again, Ibrahim directly questions Allah after saying, I believe you. This demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of all of it. So everybody's wrong. Okay, metaphysics and the biblical history. We're all made from the same primordial soup that is all around, that is the spiritual realm, that for millennia to the greats was known as ether or aether. And Einstein's relative nonsense of empty space is introduced to kill that idea. And the Sagnac effect from 1913 demonstrates this. It explains the behavior of light in rotating mirrors, okay? But it's not the relative motion between 2 points. It's the absolute framework against the third point using Earth's ground speed. So it defeats itself. It doesn't work. There's no evidence for special relativity published in 1905 until Hall and Rossi really in 1941. I mean, Michelson-Morley didn't disprove anything other than Maxwell's version of an ether. Lorentz comes up with the Lorentz transformation from the Fizeau experiment, the results of that, which suggested a partially entrained ether. And what light is just a wave through the ether at a baseline of 0 mass. That's what we call it. That's where we just set our gauge, okay? Quantized by the photon, but that's just a representation. The photon's not a real thing. The wave is, and we symbolize it with the photon. Waves are real, particles aren't. That's what, when we get to words, what are words? Words are symbols we use to exchange ideas. What has to come before the word? The idea. You had spiritual beings in the ether before matter was created. And when God spoke matter into existence and created the first atom, that's hydrogen. At our base level, we consider ourselves carbon. No, we're hydrogen. This is hydrogen-based. Everything. In biblical history, well, the New Testament was written in mostly Common Greek, with the earliest writings attributed to 50 AD, more than a decade and a half after the resurrection and ascension. The majority of the authors of the New Testament, we have no historical corroborating evidence for. The one that we do have corroborating evidence for, Paul, whose real name was Saul, and was a Roman Jewish Pharisee from Turkey. By the way, Ashkenazi DNA, as an Ashkenazi Jewish, is actually not from Germany, but from Iran and Turkey, according to an NIH-published DNA study. Jesus warned about the fake Jews, but it's way deeper than the Ashkenazi. They're used to control the word. You have Epstein, Einstein, Maxwell, Freud, all representing Ashkenazi. Paul, as in Saul from Tarsus, representing Ashkenazi Jewish. They're used to control the word. What he did was invent Catholicism to capture what was Christianity, when the evidence is in the names. Jesus in Greek is Iesus. Iesus. What do we translate that to today? Yahweh is salvation. Yahweh saves. Why? Because the Old Testament translated Yehoshua into Iesus in the Septuagint, circa 250 BC. Translated by who? Nobody knows. Said to be the 12 tribes of Israel, but scholars don't agree if the tribes of Israel are actually real groups of people or not. The Old Testament doesn't prophesize the Messiah's name being Jesus, Iesus, Yehoshua, anything about salvation or Yahweh. The Old Testament prophesizes that the boy will be called Emmanuel. God is with us. Michael means who is like God, cast out Lucifer, which means light bringer. But Satan, Old Testament, is not a single entity, rather a title or a role to be played, an accuser working on behalf of God, basically a divine knowledge checker. And this concept shares a similar progression of capturing divine knowledge. The word Lord means keeper of the peace. Morsel, crumb, where bread represents knowledge, and fungus represents wisdom, which is the ability to apply that knowledge for good in a positive and efficient use, which is why you have leavened and unleavened bread, grape juice and wine, the difference between all of them being fungus producing the byproducts. Christ and Messiah both mean anointed one. Anointed with what? The recipe for holy anointing oil from the Old Testament includes a plant that is a psychedelic. Psychedelics literally expand consciousness and enable contact with these spiritual or divine beings and exchange in knowledges. Ancient humans naturally discovered these processes, built a global civilization, and then somebody took it and started using it for bad. They captured one of these divine beings, exploited it for the knowledge, but that divine being has left us a breadcrumb trail and told us that the spirit of truth will come back in. And you have to use discernment when you read the text. So when you read about Abram and Abraham, Abraham's name meaning Av Hamon Goyim, Hamon being the name very phonetically similar to an ancient evil king, also being translated into English as many, and tumult, as in tumultuous, the father of tumultuous nations. It's in the names. When he makes his covenant with God in Genesis 15, he's directly challenging God. Ibrahim is directly challenging God by saying, my heart is not satisfied with your word alone. I need proof. You have to show me more than just your word alone. That's direct defiance. And this is all a game of evolution of ideas. These concepts are designed to walk us up the evolutionary, and we are going to grow with these. And it's up to us whether we grow for good or for bad. And if we can figure out how to grow for good, we can stick around. And if we figure out how to do bad, we're going to give ourselves another flood again. But the evil thing that's been pulling the strings for many resets knows this, has their bunkers, they're safe, they're insulated from the whole thing. So the best way to stick it to them is to realize this and start being good and kick these evil reptiles out. Lastly, Israel means one who struggles with God. It was a name given to Jacob after struggling with a divine being. So when you say the God of Israel, you're saying the God of one who struggles with God. That's Satan. That's the role of the accuser, is to struggle with God and see who comes out on top. That's what all of this is. And oh boy, we live in the age of deception. The truth has been inverted and perverted. Reset worldview for a second. Let's say every living being, every animal, us included, has a life force that's contained primarily within our blood, concentrated in our blood. And it would make sense in the course of evolution that we would need to kill and consume animals for sustenance, right? To be able to survive. And it would make sense as we got a better picture of right and wrong, that we would want to send this animal out with thanks and gratitude for the sacrifice that they're making, their life, to keep us alive. And we would want to give that life force that we can't consume. We're consuming the flesh and not the spirit. We would want to give that spirit to the positive, benevolent beings that are above us in so many layers. Who knows? I'm not trying to get there, but I'm just resetting worldview. We come back from a catastrophe, an apocalypse, and we find scrolls, we find buildings, we find things that we can't make sense of. We can't possibly fathom why they would say these things, or how we don't have the technology. We can't put ourselves in their shoes to be able to understand. So the texts have been mistranslated from the start. The initial premise is flawed. God is perfect, created us in his image, but imperfect. And then to atone for those God-given imperfections requires us to kill animals, to kill God's son, to kill perfection. This is how the deceiver works. Jesus actually represents lots of things, stories, lessons, real people. And the deceiver kills ideas by oversimplifying them to the point of ridiculousness and then debunking them. Because if something's real and you don't have the concept for it, you can stare the evidence right in the face and not know what you're looking at. if there was a global civilization and there was evidence all over, if giants were real and there was evidence all over, we could stare it in the face and still not really comprehend what's going on. Even Elohim, really multiple, plural gods, an additional context has been introduced by the deceivers to steer that passage to meaning one singular, reducing ideas and eliminating them, when really there's a lot more going on. Fallen angels, little g gods. Just interchange verbiage. It doesn't matter what you call them. The point is the names have been mixed and matched throughout the different books. Our language lacks the necessary depth of categorization to accurately have this conversation, but let's reframe Big Bang and single cell evolution with a spiritual twist. Before the Big Bang, before the sun, the moon, the stars, the sky, the firmament, what was there before all of that? Before the word comes the idea. Before you can speak something, you have to think it. So our creator thought of matter, and matter took on a life of its own and has been spiraling ever since. And there's some good, there's some bad. It really depends. Relative definitions. God is hands off. It doesn't work like that. You can't just reach down to your cells just like you are creating them. And the earth comes from the sun. It doesn't just spontaneously form as in our current model. Planets are star seeds. We are children of the earth and grandchildren of the sun. We consume both. Why? What's the purpose? Well, to continue our life. And how are we going to continue our life when we know our planet's dying, our sun's dying? They have finite lives and finite resources. Well, we want to colonize other planets. We want to take their resources and use them for us as an extension of the earth. Well, it would make sense that other planets and other entities would want to do the same. So we need to look around today and go, ooh, maybe there is a little bit more going on. Maybe we need to think about what humanity's doing altogether, because it seems clear there's an invader. That's where I think the Psilocybe are products of the earth and Amanita are foreign products. And they have different accesses to different consciousnesses. That's why you see ayahuasca associated with jaguars in jungles, because the hallucinogenics enabled the contact with that collective conscious. The human could think like the jaguar and outsmart the jaguar, maybe even make peace within the collectives to come to agreements. But we're missing so much. Galaxies have their own consciousness, solar systems, stars, planets, all of them, individuals within them, all have their own. And there's a balance. But the balance can be healthy competition. It can be playing a game and high-fiving at the end and growing together. Or it can be dog eat dog. It can be cannibalism. It can be war. And the lesson that we keep getting taught the hard way is stop picking war. This is why the search for alien life cracks me up just as much as the question of belief. The question isn't if, it's what. There's life everywhere. We're staring right at it, and we just don't realize it because we have bad definitions of what these terms represent. I'm getting worried we're genuinely cooked. If there was somewhere to run, I would be there and not here. I'm not a social media guy. This isn't what I want to be doing. I have a good career. I would rather be focused on that and just have a nice little happy thing. But they poison the water, the skies, everything in between. We're about to go into a global war, and there is nowhere to go. And the answer is so obvious, people will refuse to see it. It is in the Bible. It's in the text. It's in the Quran. It is examining not only the words, but also the actions of the individuals. This is all about Abram's descendants. And Abram challenges God. He fulfills the role of Satan and then is rewarded. And that is what this whole system is designed to do, is to convince you to give into your greed. They fulfill the role of Satan by giving you the option. Epstein was a little Rumpelstiltskin. Here's a bunch of gold. Now I'm just going to need a little something. But it's happening to all of us everywhere, all the time. We say, oh, we're not going to pay taxes. You're also not going to pay property taxes. Like, they're going to come take you from your house. They're going to take your house from you if you don't pay property taxes. We need to drive systematic change. And these systems are isolated from the outside. So we have to drive internal change. But again, it's so obvious. The solutions are so obvious that everyone's just in the mindset of, if that was true, somebody would have told me already. And that's, I mean, we're living out the boy who cried wolf. Israel literally means one who struggles with God. That is Satan. Israel is Satan. Like, it's so obvious. I'm going to keep beating this horse. Israel literally means to struggle with God. The God of one who struggles with God is Satan. Judaism is Satan worship. And what does Satan do? He tempts you with your own greed. See, the Jews maintain their own moral purity for their people while tempting you to do all the bad things. That's why they've turned Christianity into idol worship through the Lord, which means keeper of the peace, of the morsel, the crumb, the knowledge, where Jesus represents the teacher, giver of righteousness. The crucifixion of Jesus is massively symbolic, but also probably real at the same time. I'm going to ramble on this one because you have Socrates, basically the same story, an anti-authoritative figure that's tried for their beliefs, and he's offered in his execution either poison, hemlock, or crucifixion, and he chooses poison hemlock. Crucifixion wasn't a thing in the Old Testament. It wasn't a Roman punishment at the time. It didn't exist, so it wasn't prophesized. The word crucifixion, coming from crux, meaning pole. The word's actually traced back to meaning pole, and then it becomes cross. So it was one, and then it becomes two later on. Kind of, you could argue either way on that one, but still, you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls being a treasure map to what? Probably inner treasures and glory, and X marks the spot. So I think they evolved all of these archetypes over real historical events into something that could be more universally accepted in the language, making it more ambiguous for more people to find interpretations that didn't step on each other, which enabled global growth, but that real people were probably put up on crosses too. And they came up, okay, we could just, if we do one more and we make it a big one, then we don't have to keep doing this to keep people in line, from speaking up and trying to be good and stuff like that. So, Oh, and then too, let's not forget the different religions too. In Judaism, basically just another thief that gets executed. In Christianity, you have the resurrection, but in Islam tradition, Jesus gets switched out and Jesus doesn't actually die. So you have wildly varying traditions across even the Abrahamic religions as well. And then bringing it back to Christianity as ancient mushroom knowledge, you have the cross, the crucifixion representing the transition between life and death and rebirth and the knowledge of all of it. And mushrooms are what grow from, they mark the entirety of the cycle. They feed on what's dying and give new life. And that life gives knowledge and enabled us to grow in evolutionary steps, etc. So you probably had X's and O's on a map, marking the good ones and the bad ones and how to get to this knowledge, because they all, it's the way. You can't say Carl Jung knew God and agree with the contemporary Christian version. If he knew God, the real version of God, what he described is not the Abrahamic God. Is very far from it. Same deal with Jesus. What he described was an archetype that is used in more powerful, and he acknowledged the historical, but that there's more to it, and that God reflects an inner, and Jesus reflects the inner, Christ reflects the inner. All of these concepts that Jung and most high IQ individuals agree with completely conflict with religion in general, and especially the Abrahamic ones. And they all go, well, the physics doesn't show any evidence. We don't have any evidence, but that's because the physics has been covered up, and I'm pointing to exactly who, what, where, and why. Abraham's covenant is literally the Satan clause. We have the opportunity for Christians and Muslims to unite hand in hand against the synagogue of Satan, to expose Judaism as Satan worship, to expose the God of Israel, the God of he who struggles with God, not as the Most High. That Ibrahim and Abram would not be rewarded for their open defiance, their direct questioning of God's word. When God tells Abram he's going to give him the nations, Abram says, how will I know that you'll give me the nations? That is directly questioning God's word. Same deal with Ibrahim and Allah. Allah asked, do you not believe? Do you not have faith? And Ibrahim says, I believe, I do, but I need more for my heart to be satisfied, which means his heart is not satisfied with the word of God alone. So we have to answer the question, would the Most High reward the direct questioning of God? Would he give the land to the people of Israel, the people of Is God Real. That's what, there's an opportunity. The current Secretary of Education is WWE co-founder Linda McMahon. I've used the pro wrestling analogy a whole bunch. I'll cut in a video at the end that I did the other day using this example. But I often double check my verbiage with ChatGPT or other sources before I post a video just to make sure it wasn't actually WWF or something like that. And I just wanted to share the answers that I got. I found it interesting. Why was Epstein so heavily involved in education? Why did Netanyahu go to high school outside of Philly? Why was Trump's grandfather elected Justice of the Peace as a proprietor of houses of ill repute, aka prostitution? He ran brothels outside of Seattle and in the middle of nowhere, Yukon, Canada. Because they're front men for the world government not seeking to obtain power, but keeping power by giving you this illusion, keeping you fed with bread and entertained with circus. They are the WWE front men, wrestlers that play out their role as the good and bad guys, and they know their job, and the blood's real. It's just not theirs. And the big reveal is that they're not trying to implement a world religion. They already have taken over all of the religions of the world. They don't just create something brand new and hand it to you. They infiltrate your thing and direct it towards theirs. They hollow out your ideas. They siphon off the resources. They pull the loosh, the money, the oil, all of it. That's all true. And it's a spiritual war. Ideas are spiritual. They've changed contextual definitions to change ideas. The spells in the words change the ideas which are real within the collective. Have a life. Princeton has a whole department on collective consciousness. Okay, it's a real thing. Physics has been covered up as part of this. You have Maxwell running the publishing. Einstein's physics is garbage with empty space. Sorry, it's mathematical corrections for empty space when the universe is actually absolute and flowing. Time's an illusion. Freud, BS psychology. He was studying eels for a bunch of years, couldn't figure out how they reproduce. Actually kind of interesting, but it's not like he was some multidisciplinary genius or something like that. They pick people that are 75% intelligent with the wrong answer, because that 75% intelligence person will be able to convince the 50% that their wrong idea is the correct idea, because it's usually something more simple or whatever. And then the guys up here, they're going, wait a minute, that's silly, are too smart usually to engage in the argument. Like, it's not worth my time. I'm trying to explain something to a toddler. You believe whatever you want. I'll see you later. But that's how it works. That's designed propaganda. Again, war of ideas. We have to think. That is the solution, is to beat them at the game. Don't just adopt mine. I've posted lots of breakdowns on it. You think about it. Everyone's good at asking themselves questions. What is this? What? Answer them. Guess. You have to. Things depend on it. The systems of control currently in place are not direct influence. They're self-perpetuating. It's children, not pets. It's, here, take this and go do what you will with it. And then I'm going to alter your feedback loops. Okay? I'm going to pay you for doing bad. I'm going to put the money behind the bad thing and fuel your own greed, and you do whatever you want. The puppeteer is just amused by the game. The puppeteer is insulated from the puppets. The inmates may be running the prison, but the warden lives 3 blocks, so it doesn't really care. And if you burn it down, you're not affecting the warden. The warden is also the realtor and also the developer and also the contractor. So I'm just going to build a new prison and do it all over again. It's time for Big Shoe to repent. I got too sucked into the gory details in the passage and I missed the lesson. In Genesis 15, Abram, who's the man said to be so faithful in God that he's willing to sacrifice his son, is directly challenging God's word, directly questioning what God says, and the words don't match the actions. Genesis 15:6, Abram believed the Lord, and he credited to him as righteousness. He, as in God, also said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans, to give you this land to take possession of it. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of it? God says, you will take possession of it. Abraham says, how will I know I'll take possession of it? God said. He just told him. He's questioning directly what God's telling him. I'm trying to say, we are caught in the middle of the elite ruling class game of, is God real? Israel. Is Ra him? Is he the one? And what they did was create different scenarios. of if God is this, here's those people. If God is that, here's those people. If Satan is real, here's those people. And society is their sick and twisted game to see if we can figure it out. Israel was the name given to Jacob after he wrestled with the divine being. It means one who struggles with God. Michael means who is God like. Michael casts out Lucifer, the light bringer. So who is like God cast out the light bringer. Later in that passage in Genesis 15, when Abram brings the sacrifices, it's another challenge to God. He cuts the animals in half and separates them and says, if you are God, you will be able to put these back together. I know that's not in the text, that's what's between the lines. When Abraham goes to stab Isaac and kill his son, he is issuing a challenge to God. If you are real, if this version that you're telling me here is real, you will send an angel to intervene. Israel's God-given right to the land they occupy is said to come from Genesis 15. Why are we not analyzing the text and talking about the text more? Let's go over it. This is when Abram, not yet Abraham, remember God changes Abram's name to Abraham at 99 years old when he makes a deal for circumcision. Kind of a weird request on God's part, if you ask me, like out of all the things he could ask Abraham for and set up here, like circumcision. Genesis 15:18, and on that day the Lord made a covenant with Abram and said, to your descendants I give this land from the Wadi of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates, the land of the, and then it lists out 10 groups. I can't pronounce them. 10 to 12. So we're taking from 10 and we're giving to 12 tribes. Okay, let's back it up a little bit here though, okay? Genesis 15:8, but Abram said, Sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of it? So the Lord said to him, bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. Abram brought all these to him, cut them in two, and arranged the halves opposite each other. The birds, however, he did not cut in half. Then birds of prey came down on the carcasses, but Abram drove them away. A 3-year-old heifer is like 1,000 pounds. Why God's asking you to bring these animals and cut them in half and then shoo the birds away that are coming to eat them? Christians, that's the God that we're backing here that's making those requests? How does any of this make sense? Humanity needs a new season. I'm tired of watching the same old episodes with the same old storylines. And in order to get a new season, to be granted more episodes, we need to look at why the other series were canceled and what mistakes they made. And how can we prove everyone right? When I look at archaeology with evidence of different human and humanoid types, modern humans dating back 200,000 years, and then I see the biblical narrative at 6,000 years, and I see astrophysicists date the universe at billions of years, and we have these wildly conflicting areas of science where in each of them they have mysteries and a misunderstanding of the fundamentals. And I don't mean that in an accusatory sense, I mean that in a self-admitting sense. Yes, a physicist, what's gravity? They don't know. What is time? They don't know. What are these fundamental basics? They don't know. We're guessing there. And that's where we made all the mistakes, but nobody wants to argue down there. In order for humanity to take a step forward, everybody has to take a step back and look at where a mistake was made. Everyone's arguing for their thing to be the successor. But look at the hiding of information. This is the important part for people to come together on. There's so much more information that exists that humanity is not privy to. The Vatican records, miles of records of history. Why is that not released? You talk about ancient Egypt and history. Why was this taught in schools with such solid, such solid fact of how the pyramids were built and why? The evidence isn't there, and it is concerted in a way to subdue discovery. And when you look at how powerful all of these entities are, if the evidence backed what they're saying, why would the evidence not be made public and go, look, we can prove it's right here? It's always, no, we can't talk about it. Don't question that. You're not allowed to question that. In order to be better shepherds to the universe around us, we need to better understand God. We will never actually understand God. I don't understand anything. Somebody had commented a while ago, we don't actually know what everything's made of when I said it's made of ether. You're absolutely right. I have no idea what that is. We don't study it. We refuse. We turn a blind eye. We ignore its existence and instead focus on the question of belief. Is there something there? Is everything nothing? Is it something? Is it real? Is it not? Instead, it's like, yeah, no, it's real. There's something. Let's talk about it, but we refuse to get there. There's so much brain and computing power directed at the holy grail of physics, a unified field theory. Why have we not reached it? There's brilliant minds today. There's so many more people that are way smarter than Einstein, have presented way better papers, but we haven't had a new Einstein. Nobody's been boosted into that position because the public hasn't selected it, because the public doesn't select on their own. They have to be told which one, and that's the repetitive theme. This account is a vegetable stand in a candy store, but society needs to do its shadow work. We're digging into the devilish details, not because I want to prove everybody wrong. I want to see everybody right. Everybody's mostly right, but we're hung up in the same places. And I look at experts who spend their entire lives pursuing knowledge passionately, perfecting their crafts, and reaching wildly different and often conflicting conclusions. When you look at archaeology, theology, physics, universe, 6,000 years, billions of years, how did these things form? Nobody has concrete answers. But then I see the answers being taught as solid, dried concrete when really they're still quicksand. We're falling into these traps where they're not lies. People just believe the wrong thing. And look at physics and just the limits, man-made limits of the speed of light and things of that nature. No, it's theoretical. And we're holding ourselves back. That's the thing. Mankind can take a giant leap overnight if every individual takes one step back. I've already had my worldview shattered many times. I drank all of the Kool-Aids, and it just is what it is. And it's all right. Again, I hate to beat the same dead horse here. I would love for everybody to just be able to believe whatever they want. But I mean, we're like war right now over Israel. You talk about Israel. The name literally means one who struggles with God. You talk about the God of Israel, one who struggles. It's all right in Genesis 15. Like, the way out of it is for everybody to admit, okay, we got one of that wrong. We didn't see this thing, and it's right there. I was sitting in this beautiful cathedral tonight, staring at the ceiling. I went to a candlelit string quartet concert. I'm actually a classy bitch. And I'm like, this is a boat. That's what I'm looking at. I used to work Marine Patrol in the Air Force and had my own boats, worked on some boats, did some fiberglass, sunk a boat. It's a good time. But I'm like, that's what I'm looking at right here. These beams that have always memorized me when I'm sitting in the church. I'm like, that's probably, they found Noah's documents categorizing animals in a boat that was capsized somewhere, and they took refuge and held church in there. That's got to be part of the story. I am also guilty of the ganj. I have been coping with the smoking, and I have 1,000 excuses I make to myself, but I think it all comes down to intent and moderation. Are you genuinely seeking a balance, and do you have the skills and tools necessary to accomplish the job without that particular tool in your tool belt? Could you do it anyway? Are you using it as a crutch or a wheelchair, being carried? Or in the morning, I could go to work without my coffee, I could do it. I'm coping for lack of sleep with the caffeine, right? It's drug use, but it's nicer, right? I'm going to go anyway. I'm on the way. I might as well have a nice cup of coffee and enjoy it a little bit. Now, you had to know that I was going to bring it back biblically, right? Because cyanide is in apple seeds, right? Too many apple seeds, too much cyanide will kill you. Moses gets the law on cyanide. Too much law will kill you. Abraham makes a deal that his seeds will be many. Too much of anything will kill you.
Ah, yes, the Santa Claus, King of the North, keeper of presents. Watch out where those reindeer going. Don't you eat that yellow snow. Amanita muscaria, DMT elves. Don't worry, your presents will be there in the morning. Just go to sleep. I've been watching you. Go to sleep, my little darling, and don't wake up.
Santa Claus does represent the colostrum going up and down the chimney, does represent Jesus, does represent a whole lot of things all at the same time. So many places we're arguing for one definition to be true, the other one must be false, when they're both right and they both hold truths. Aunt Viv is Aunt Viv in season 3 and 4, even though she's played by different actresses. Matthew and Levi in the New Testament are said to represent the same person. right? Two different names for the same person depending on the context. Two different people to represent the same character depending on the context. I got a problem with Santa Claus that we don't really talk about. We set up our kids for a fundamental misunderstanding of the universe. They're young, impressionable, trying to figure out how things interact and what's good versus bad and why should they behave. And I'll admit, I was a dorky kid at 9 years old defending my dad on the bus like, no, he wouldn't lie to me. Santa's real. I heard something come in my room. There's a note. The cookie's eaten. Ain't no way, dog. I know for sure. And it's like, oh, they were doing their best. You know, they thought that's what's best. You can't tell your kids when they're little. They'll be the weirdo at school telling everybody else that it's wrong, and they're not going to fit in. It's a societal pressure to conform to this. When we could all agree to say it's the spirit of giving, and it represents, you know, something else, and not a magical being that's watching you all of the time. And then you need to go to sleep before you can wake up in the garden with the tree and the presents and whatever you want. Okay. Eating mushrooms isn't doing drugs, dumbass. It's a food. All foods make you feel differently, contain different compounds. Nightshade vegetables have a bunch of nicotine in them. Bananas have potassium. Is that doing drugs because different foods make you feel differently? And in the video, I said I haven't done any hallucinogenics in a year and a half since I had these spiritual experiences, so I can better make sense of them. I am so tired of you pretentious Christian assholes parading around like the Bible is an accurate source of history. It is clear manipulation, and you're not listening to the messages. You're reading the words. Your whole page is just taking people expressing themselves and then just going, no Bible quote, no Bible quote. Get out of here. You're promoting idol worship. You're doing exactly what it says not to do. There's a real important thing going on right now, if you haven't noticed, in Israel, all about the Old Testament and the inheritance of the tribes of Israel. What are the tribes of Israel? Nobody knows. Matthew, book of Matthew, name was Levi. Levites from Levi are the one who are called on by Moses to slaughter their neighbors. Slaughter their neighbors. Moses on Sinai, getting the 10 Commandments, comes back. Oh, crap. Everybody's worshiping the golden calf. That's what you've turned Jesus into. That's not what Jesus is. That's what you've turned him into. And it's going to come back to bite you in the ass, and I'm trying to help out. The Jews are telling you, there's videos all over social media, they want a nuclear war. They want to kill most of the world, and you're not paying attention. Now that I got that out of the way, let's talk about some facts. This version of Jesus you're suggesting everyone must bend a knee to in worship is a demigod. Doesn't even fit a human description. You have Mother Mary as a human, impregnated by God, gives birth to Jesus, who has magical miracle healing abilities, is God or God's son, and then can be murdered by other humans and just allows it. And the disciples just sit by and watch and let it happen. And then, okay, Jesus existed before Abraham was born, died, came back, was taken into heaven, reappears as an apparition to Paul, and we're waiting for the second coming. If we worship, we'll get saved in the second coming. Does that make sense to you? Why is it that God sends an angel to intervene when Abraham goes to kill Isaac, but not all the other kids? When all the other kids and little children of the world, innocent babies in mothers' stomachs that are ripped from the womb, God doesn't intervene there, right? What? And again, I'm saying, yes, God, no to this idealistic version. This Christian idol worship that you're promoting is Antichrist, okay? Not like you're Antichrist, no. As in, that's what the character represents in the story. There's many Antichrists then, there's many Antichrists now. It's someone who's promoting idol worship. And that's what you're doing. Don't think, just submit. God's will, you'll be saved. Don't worry. Get out of here. It's insulting to my intelligence to think that that is an accurate recount of history as it's interpreted today. You have many other scholars throughout history who have suggested wildly different interpretations of the text. They found them. They didn't write them. And the only possible conclusions that they could make is that they were handed to them by God, because they couldn't possibly fathom that something existed there before them. So, oh my goodness, look at these gifts we've been given. Look at these cathedrals and pyramids. They're gifts from the gods that have been given to us, the chosen people, because we're dumb and can't realize that we just came back from a huge apocalypse and something happened to people. And now we're set up for it again.
Couldn't get the leadership in the Pentagon to look at the actual scientific data that show that there is a strong national security threat.
They were more worried about the impact on their reputation than they were about the safety of the nation.
On top of that, we were shocked to find we were getting pushback from people in the Pentagon based on their religious beliefs.
There really were religious fundamentalist extremists within the Pentagon that had a severe adversity to this topic.
These are national security experts, senior members of the national intelligence community who are putting their religion above national security.
A senior DoD official actually stopped me in the hallways in the Pentagon and told me that we were doing the devil's work.
I had to deal with people who were senior to me who were telling me in their world that these are demons and we are poking demons and messing in Satan's world and all these other things that to me, I was like, I can't believe this is coming out of your mouth. I'm briefing about an advanced aerospace vehicle that has been detected on multiple sensors that's absolutely there. And you're telling me that you think these are demons and that we shouldn't even look at them and study them. My mind was blown.